Okay, we are live. It's the first time in a long time that me and my buddy David and Nick have done one of these. But we're finally talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, the much anticipated Marvel film of 2024, Marvel's first R-rated film. Um, it's 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 a movie. It's a
What a way to put it.
yeah.
That
Is it a
sounded
movie? Some
so
people
enthusiastic.
believe that it is not, in fact, a movie.
It is not. No, it is not. In fact, a movie. It is a lifestyle. It is the only movie to be seen and to be watched for the next 24 years, arbitrarily.
So the question is, do we do the full preamble, or we just talk about like Deadpool's 1 and 2 and our thoughts on that going into this, or?
That's
I'd
actually
say
a really
some
good
combination
point.
of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, some
I
combination of the
think
two.
it makes more sense stick to Deadpool and Wolverine, but for comparison's sake, and for whatever, if we need to do what Wade Wilson does all the time, just reference a bunch of shit, make callbacks to the first and second films. But I think it makes a lot more sense to just stay focused to the film, especially because while it is the third act, the third part, it's the only movie set in stone in the MCU that actually has a place on the grand, phase 5, phase 6 going forward.
We'll see if it has that place, actually, because I'll get into this more, but I will not be shocked if beyond having Deadpool in more MCU movies, the events of this film never come up again.
Yeah, I don't see this as a super integral film to all that comes after, and I'm absolutely fine with that. I don't think every film has to be that. And also,
well, I guess let's do Malik, then David, then me. How you felt going in?
Actually, now that you guys have said that, I retract my statement. I retract my statement because also in the past couple of movies have within the MCU have had no bearing, even when they like Eternals. Oh, what has been going on since Eternals with the giant celestial sticking out of the earth?
We'll get to that. You know what? We should have a whole thing about
that's why I'm retracting my
these
statement.
phases are going and what the quote unquote plan is or isn't. But I think it makes more sense to talk about that with actual plot stuff.
Yeah.
So now let's just do impressions.
Okay. So, I love the first Deadpool movie, wholeheartedly and unabashedly. I think it's one of the best superhero origin movies that we have. Right up there with Batman Begins and the first Spider-Man. I think Wade is a super endearing character. I think the emotionality of that movie is really strong, while also being incredibly fun and bombastic and playful. And all around, like I thought it was a great introduction to that character for people that don't know who he is. Even though, even still, the version of this character that we have on film is a lot more tame to a lot of the versions in the comics. Because the fundamental thing to Wade in the comics is he is unequivocally a psychopath who desperately wants to be a hero and wants to be one of the good guys, but can't really wrap his head around what heroism even is. He admires that in so many other characters, like Spider-Man, like Daredevil, etc. But he himself is constantly kind of falling short of that. But with the interpretation that Ryan Reynolds has brought, I think he's made himself and his voice in that character kind of interlinked in the same way that we think of Robert Downey Jr. Used to think of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. In the same way that we, think of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. He kind of is this character now. And the first movie was incredibly strong. I did not like the second movie anywhere near as much. I found a lot of the stuff with Vanessa and the afterlife kind of hackneyed and pretentious and a little convoluted and weird. and so I like that kind of like bedrock foundation of that first movie, that that romance, that love interest, that being kind of the emotional core of the franchise. Um, it's kind of at the back seat here so that we can do our buddy cop bromance thing with Wolverine, but like that's still like a pretty key motivator for Deadpool, tangentially. Like he's still yearning to get that relationship back because he's kind of lost it off screen, kind of off screen, um, even after having brought her back to life and his friends back to life, which also happened off screen. But I'm not in love with, just to get my major criticism of the movie out of the way. I'm not in love with how kind of forced a lot of the emotionality is in the climax. Because we'll cut back to scenes where characters have been talking, and there's key lines of dialogue that are removed from the scene when we saw it that are revealed later. Like when Wolverine repeats the line about being an X-Man and being proud to wear the suit when he's talking to Cassandra Nova, which me and Nick have talked about off mic. I don't think that scene, well, I don't think that dialogue makes sense anywhere in the actual scene, funny enough, which is probably why they didn't put it in. But aside from that, I think the movie's really fun. I think a lot of the premise stuff with the Time Authority is kind of convoluted and forced, just so we can contrive certain events to happen. But the movie's so fun and audacious and genuinely engaging that stuff kind of takes a backseat, especially while you're watching it. Overall, this is without a doubt one of the most fun Marvel films that I've watched in quite a long time. It's right behind, for me anyway, it's right behind the first Deadpool. I think it easily eclipses Deadpool 2. And I walked out pretty satisfied first time. I just think the plot could have been finagled in a way that made more sense, and that emotionality they were so committed to, they kind of lost some story integrity for the sake of that, which I didn't love. But overall, I think this is an incredibly fun, very strong movie, and kind of like a true, return to form for the MCU. I don't think this one movie alone, quote unquote, saved the MCU. It's going to take more than one good film, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. So give us your thoughts, Nick.
Oh, I thought I was going after David, but okay. So I told Malik about this, which is that I had an extremely similar experience with this movie that I had with The Marvels, which is that I sit down and I watch it in theaters, and the first time I watch it, I'm like, that was extremely mid. Like, it wasn't a bad movie, but it's just, I was kind of excited for it, and it didn't really do anything for me, like to the degree that I wanted it to. Like, it was fine. It's perfectly fine. And I'm not really in a rush to rewatch it. And then I do rewatch that movie and this one, and I'm like, oh, the me who watched this for the first time was kind of crazy. Like, I enjoy this a lot, actually. And I think what I had on it's I think the existence of this movie in the form that it is kind of something that I needed, and like the whole discourse around this franchise and movies in general honestly kind of needed, because I like the first Deadpool a fair amount. I think it's a really solid movie. I don't really think it has any problems. I'm much like Malik in that I don't care for Deadpool 2 as much. I wish I'd rewatched Deadpool 2 in advance of having this discussion, because I did actually sit down and rewatch the first film for the first time in a long time just a couple days ago, and I'm like, yeah, I like this better than I remember liking it. And I wonder if I would have that with the second film, but I just have no urge to sit down with that movie again. I'm like, I saw it twice. That's about the amount of times that I needed to see it. But I had that feeling coming out of Deadpool and Wolverine, and now I'm like, I want to watch that movie a third time. So who knows? Poor Deadpool 2. I'm sorry, but I don't know. Maybe the vibes just weren't right. But my thing with Deadpool and Wolverine is that I think I had a problem that is understandable and that a lot of people had in the first viewing, which is like so much of the film, my mind is going, does this work as a movie if you don't have the background knowledge of all the Disney Fox stuff, if you don't have any attachment whatsoever to these previous Fox Marvel properties? And I think it was like in watching the second movie or like between viewings where I kind of had to stop myself and go, does does it matter if it works in a vacuum, because it doesn't exist in a vacuum? Like, for as much as this movie is, a big blockbuster release that's being seen by everybody and everyone's coming into it with different degrees of context, it is also like its mission statement is to be a referendum on the Fox era of Marvel and to be a reflection on where that branch of the franchise has ended up. And I kind of had to convince myself that like it's okay if a movie does not always go out of its way to like work in a vacuum for people who have no background knowledge all the time. And that's true for comic book movies, and that's true for anything really. I think in my attempt to be critical of stuff, I sometimes go into things going like, if it doesn't work completely, like with for anyone on any level of context, and it's doing something wrong, and that's just not what this movie's trying to be. It is trying to be something that has more to say to you if you are invested on that level. And like, there's nothing wrong with that really. And I'll say this much: for it doing that, it also this movie is not as well directed as Deadpool 1 and 2. I think that's can we all agree on that? Like, I think that much is just true.
What do you mean
Um,
by well directed, specifically?
Just
yeah.
like impressive visually and
So
edited well.
cinematography, then, not
Okay,
really.
yeah.
It's not about. It's not a criticism or a take on Sean Levy as a director. You're talking about the direction they took with cinematography and the way they chose to shoot certain scenes, or color grade
Yes.
it, or edit it.
Yes. I feel like it definitely pales on that level next to 1 and 2, but it also, on a story level, I found it kind of more satisfying than 1 and 2, and it does something that I've wanted these movies to do since like I knew that a Deadpool movie was getting made, and I walked out of the first movie being kind of disappointed that it didn't do it, which is actually having Deadpool's like awareness of the medium be relevant to the story. Because in Deadpool 1 and 2, the fact that Wade is able to break the fourth wall and that he knows he's a character in a movie is kind of just a quaint little quirk that doesn't really matter to either of those films. And in this one, it is a movie about the fact that Wade knows he's in movies. And on that level, it makes it so this is the first and only one of these that I'd say could only ever be a Deadpool movie. Like, you take out some of the fourth wall jokes in the first two films, and I think those movies you could kind of remake with any wisecracking character and it would be mostly fine. This one had to be a Deadpool movie. It had to exist with all of the Fox baggage, and that specificity I really, really like. And like, we'll get into as we go through like the plot and stuff, specific moments that I think really worked. But I don't know. I think just coming at it from a different perspective really clicked this movie into place for me. And I won't call it like top tier MCU for me. I won't say it quote unquote saved the MCU, because unlike you guys, I don't think the MCU needs to be saved. But I don't know. I think it's a really solid movie. I'm glad that I saw it and I want to see it again.
But before we go to David, just to piggyback off of that real quick, Nick, I I kind of like Marvel is giving me whiplash right now. I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with the studio because like we've talked about this. I've simmered down and calmed down slightly. I'm still not a fan, and I think it's the dumbest thing they've ever done. But like casting Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man makes like my visceral reaction to that is, well, I guess they do need to be saved, because what the hell is this choice?
We could have a whole multi-hour podcast just about that choice, distinct from anything else.
You meant Dr. Doom. You said Iron Man. You meant Dr. Doom.
Yeah. But the other thing, which makes me think that they don't need to be saved, Daredevil Born Again, and how amazing that looks. And like they didn't skip a beat. It feels like exactly the same tonally and aesthetically, and with the performances and the cinematography and it just feels like they picked right up where the show left off, and we're just in season 4 of Daredevil. Like I see that and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about needing to be saved? And I feel like we're just right around the corner from the next like either bad movie or insane announcement that's going to make me pull my hair out. I don't know. But
let's also be fair here that there are some movies that we've gotten so far that I don't think were trash. They just weren't good. And there are then this weird middle ground. So we just, because, and we've known this we've known this since post phase, like right after phase 1. The bar is set so high, storytelling, visuals, character development, etc., that if Marvel wavers even slightly, the fans attack them with a passion that it was absolute trash, that the Hulk in this scene did not look perfectly photorealistic, or this didn't happen, this movie wasn't as good, or whatever. There are a handful of MCU movies, especially recently, that aren't terrible. They just aren't good. And it's part of that whiplash I can agree with. I can relate to. Not that, this movie was like, I don't think, just as a quick tangent, Doctor Strange 2, I don't think was a bad movie. I don't. But I don't think it was a good movie either. I don't think it was as good as the first movie. And I think what hurt it the most was actually the fans overhyping, there's going to be a reference. We're going to see Tom Cruise, a superior Iron Man. And we didn't get any of that. And the thing is, like, that's okay. But we fucked up our own viewing experience for a movie that wasn't even released yet. Our expectations were too high for that film. Yes, it had its flaws with Scarlet Witch. It's easily killing the Illuminati like it was nothing. And then how Kevin Feige was like, we just kind of put John Krasinski in there just to kind of like appease the fans. But the movie didn't do too well, so like we're not going to use him in the future.
The movie didn't do too well. It made almost $1 billion.
Well, that's not how.
I think you mean
Marvel's
that decision in the movie maybe wasn't received well.
No, people have been trying to fan cast John Krasinski and his wife, his legitimate world life, Emily Blunt, as Reed Richards and Susan Storm for years.
I know, but then that movie came out and I saw almost nothing but people going, maybe that was a bad decision. Maybe we were wrong about that.
No, I don't think it was the casting that was the problem. It was the way they chose to use the characters and have them killed off. Do you remember all the memes that are coming out of that? The smartest man alive. And there was a video, there's an animation where he tricks Scarlet Witch into like talking to Black Bolt, and he just whispers to her and she just explodes. And that could have been in the movie, and we didn't get any of that. She's just whatever. But getting back to the main focus of the conversation, the reason I bring that up is because some of these movies have legitimately not been great. Others, phenomenal, very few, but phenomenal. And then I think a lot are getting a lot more hate than they actually deserve. They're just mid. They're
Agreed. Not specifically on that movie, but on the idea that like fandom overhypes these things. And I don't think this is a Marvel specific problem. I think this is just true of all fandoms and has been for basically as long as fandom has existed. I think people build up expectations in their head for what they want a thing to be, and then that thing comes out and it's not that, and whether or not it works on its own terms kind of gets lost in the sea of, well, it's not what I wanted. And I'm also, since Malik brought up like the announcements, keep in mind when I say I don't think the MCU needs saving, I'm making a very conscious effort to separate things that get announced or quote unquote leaked from the finished products that we have in front of us to actually judge.
That's fair.
Yes. Yeah. But
But
also,
back to this finished product.
yeah.
I would like to talk about the action.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
oh,
did David
yeah,
get
yeah.
his let's
What the hell's going on here? First and foremost, hi, my name is David. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. I was invited, and I get to say my piece now. After this gulp of water, because damn, it's hot in here. Deadpool and Wolverine. What a fucking fantastic film. That's all I got. Actually, according to Deadline, I'm going to quote it right now. Deadline, Deadpool Wolverine struts past $1 billion global box office, semicolon, soon to become biggest R-rated movie ever worldwide. And that came out yesterday. And this movie is still ranking in cash. So that alone, the popularity of this film should tell you the trajectory it's going in. And Marvel would be remiss if they did not fucking take notes, because this will be their highest grossing film, surpassing Spider-Man, which is crazy, surpassing Endgame, which is crazy.
It's
if it
not
gets to that
gonna
point.
surpass Endgame.
We don't know. It's still like what? It came out 3 weeks ago, and this is how much. This is the hype. People are watching it 3-4 times already and going back, and it's already surpassed $1 billion global. I don't know. I'm not being optimistic. I'm just saying that's fucking impressive. But I've also seen some criticism. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about my own criticisms of the film. I don't have many, honestly. I really don't. And some of these are criticisms. Some of these are just like, okay, well, whatever. But first and foremost, and I just spoke to Malik about this, what was it, 2 days ago? There's a giant, gaping, Ryan Reynolds-sized plot hole that this whole movie could have been avoided entirely in the first act if Deadpool just killed Paradox. Because I was sitting in the theater and I was watching it, and here we are at the TVA, and I'm Marvel Jesus, and we all get a laugh. And then Paradox comes out of nowhere, and just because he introduced himself as, okay, we arrested you, but we actually need your help, and we're going to turn you into even better than the Avengers, and this is what you could be if you just join us. And then so he comes off as this friendly character, this Walmart Mobius character.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Walmart Mobius is brilliant.
They couldn't afford. He's in a Paradox is in a different union from Mobius's TVA, and that is a Walmart anti-union busting joke. Look at me breaking the fourth wall. But no, they couldn't afford Owen Wilson. Fine, they wanted a new face. Fine. Also, because of the
Mobius in this movie.
I'm glad they didn't get Owen Wilson, because in this version they would have made him a bad guy. So leave Owen alone. Anyways, so the thing about him is the way he's introduced, and this character is just an authority type figure, but he's also, I can help you, and then immediate switch. Oh, by the way, I'm the main villain, and here's some more lore to the TVA that exists within the MCU, because it's not exactly the same in the comics, which is fine. And so actually it's established. They're the one, as far as I can recall, Deadpool Wolverine is the film that definitively establishes all 3 Deadpool films take place in the Logan universe, which also takes place in the Fox film universe, which has like changed 3 separate times because of time travel and reboots, whatever, of like First Class. But anyway, fine, I guess. They're loosely within the same universe, because Deadpool's Wolverine died in Logan, but in the future, but it's killing off that timeline throughout that timeline. So it's killing it in reverse, essentially. Okay. And then Deadpool's like, well, what can we do? Paradox is like, oh, normally you don't have to worry. It takes thousands of years. The movie literally could have ended because Deadpool's sigh of relief. Oh, okay, good. Wait, then why am I even here? Paradox is, oh, I'm the big villain and I just don't care for these things and the bureaucracy and I don't get what he mentions the higher ups like 3 separate times. Is that a reference to Loki or someone?
Well, the idea is
whatever.
Like, it's even messier than you're making it sound is the thing.
No, I'm just going through the script. Sorry. My point is the big gaping plot hole is that Paradox is revealed. The big twist is not so much a twist at all because he reveals it in like the first act that he's the big villain and he's what's going to cause Wade's universe to explode, whatever. The universe is going to die. And it's his fault. All Wade had to do was just kill him right there and then. Go back home. Movie ended. Problem solved. But that doesn't happen.
Wade puts together like immediately that Paradox is, in his own words, off grid. Like he's not working under the purview of the rest of the TVA. He's doing this in secret. Wade really has no reason not to just either rat on him or kill him in this room.
Exactly. And he's fucking Wade Wilson. He has every opportunity to do so. And unlike his very first interaction with the TVA, where he's unfamiliar with the portal tech, with the batons, he's seen it already. He's prepared. They suited him up. He's got weapons and everything too. He could have just killed him. And instead, there was this long drawn out, and it wasn't bad. Again, I like the acting, I like the dialogue, it plays well. But when you actually take a step back and you think about it, the movie could have literally been solved. The problem of the movie could have been solved. And then everything after that is, oh, but now there's this new big bad, Cassandra Cain, and she's Cassandra Nova. Sorry, I keep saying Cain. I don't remember where I'm getting that from, but Cassandra Nova. And then we're going this thing, and she was a cool character. The actress was great in the role. It's there. But then as an audience member, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, so is this the gatekeeper villain you have to defeat before you get to the big boss? Or is this the big boss and Paradox was the gatekeeper villain? Like, who's the real villain here? Who's the main antagonist? Because you kind of have too many antagonists. Because typically you have obstacles, then the antagonist. Obstacles could be place, locations, could be issues with tech, or if it's fantasy, it's limitations in magic. But it's, oftentimes it's faceless stormtroopers who can't shoot for shit. So not much of an obstacle. You just run straight right through them. So like, I don't know where to place Paradox and to place Cassandra because they're both bad guys. Cassandra gets out and proves to be even more so of a threat in that, but not because she uses her powers, but because she uses this very device Paradox was creating to do what he was going to do himself anyway. So I don't really know what to place those. That's one criticism. First criticism being major plot hole. Despite that, I think the movie still works fantastically well. I think it does great what every other Deadpool movie does great. It's funny, it's raw, it's Ryan Reynolds just literally just having fun with the role and winging it, and it's landing. I love seeing Hugh Jackman in the actual suit itself. There were concerns, even I had, about why does he have sleeves? Oh, because Hugh Jackman had issues with sun and exposure and yada yada yada. But then we also, in the trailers, he doesn't have sleeves. What the hell's going on? Is it CG arms? Is it not? And then we see the stages of his suit slowly, little by little, throughout the movie, just getting torn apart. And also through the references of the other costumes we've seen when Deadpool was first hopping through universes. That was amazing. I love that. What I did find interesting, though, as a little, the tiniest nitpicks, is that we never actually got to see Hugh Jackman in the suit with the 90s blue shoulder pads without the sleeves. We had it sleeves with the blue shoulder pads, and then we just had it sleeveless.
Yeah, you look at those like side by side movie versus comic outfit comparisons, and I'm like,
yeah,
right, they just kept the shoulder pads.
even
No problem.
if it was just for like 20 minutes of the 10 minutes of the film, and then had those come off, it would have worked. We're talking about a comic book accurate version of Wolverine. This is the closest we're gonna get because that's the one thing they forgot. It was leave the shoulder pads without the thing, the sleeves. Anyway, what other criticisms did I have? The only other criticism I have is the same, because we're starting with Deadpool and Wolverine. That's the main focus of this discussion, but we're also talking about the previous two films. The criticisms I've had, or things I wish I could have seen in the first two films, including this one, is the way they chose to adapt Wade Wilson from the comics. Wade Wilson from the comics, as far as I understand him, is that he's got three voices in total. He's got his main voice. He's got an internal monologue with completely different personality, and then there's a second one. And then I think there's a comic where it turns out it's a person, and he comes out of whatever. I think the best representation we've ever had of Deadpool outside of the comics is the Deadpool video game, because they straight rip from the comic itself. He's talking to himself. He's breaking the fourth wall in ways that are actually meaningful to gameplay, dialogue, character interaction, etc. And he's just going off the walls. But it's the first Deadpool dipped his toe into fourth wall breaking, as you were talking about, Nick, in terms of how he broke the fall and how it didn't have meaning. I don't think if you break the fourth wall, it has to necessarily have meaning. But with Deadpool 1 and 2, breaking the fourth wall was nothing more than a gag to look into the camera and make a real world reference to a celebrity, not even necessarily an event, but a celebrity.
Yeah, it almost feels like they have him do it because they knew people would complain if he didn't. I know that's not why, but you could tell me that and I believe you.
I think they were playing. I think that's just the easy and or lazy way of breaking the fourth wall. Despite how much of a crapshoot this show is, it's actually a better example of how to break the fourth wall. And I hate to mention it, but the very last episode of She-Hulk. Yeah. But that's what she does. The episode literally stops, and she's like, no, this isn't supposed to happen. She breaks into the Marvel Studios office and tries to talk to Kevin Feige, but Kevin Feige's this robot. And then they have this interaction, and then, immediately cut to the end of the episode where they're having a barbecue in the backyard and everything is resolved. And regardless of how bad that episode was, and all the episodes of that show was, obviously, with the exceptions of all the scenes Charlie Cox was in, no fucking brainer. It's a little bit disappointing to see She-Hulk break the fourth wall better than, and it's a TV show too. Like, again, we're talking about budget, we're talking about time differences and development.
To be fair, in the comics, she did do it first.
No, 100%. But the comics versus again, we're talking about comic books versus adaptations. I don't mind that she did it. I don't care. More power to her. She should be the one to do it as well. But the fact that the Marvel TV show that really wasn't good, wasn't consistent either in a lot of things, broke the fourth wall in a better, more meaningful, to your point, meaningful way than any of the three Deadpool movies. It's a little bit disappointing. My favorite joke in Deadpool and Wolverine, out of all of them, my favorite absolute joke, first thing that comes to mind, is when he's first told about the TVA and secret timeline, yada, yada, yada. He's like, give me a second. He runs down remember this movie? He runs down, takes the mic out of frames, talks to it, talks shit, bangs his completely forehead, slams his forehead into the lens. Glass shatters everywhere. Runs back. And even better, and I love the editing on this, you see him running back at a different angle, and there's nothing there. And I love that. That is the best fucking joke in all three Deadpool movies. The best fucking joke. This is how you make fun of breaking the fourth wall, because it was tangible. It wasn't you just looking and saying something. It was tangible. But She-Hulk still did it better. And that's a little disappointing with a franchise that keeps pushing the bar, tries to keep pushing the bar and the level and the raunchiness. And yet when it comes to the fourth wall breaks, that's the thing that they're half-assing. They don't have Ryan Reynolds with the internal monologues, which is, it's fine. It's just, I wish he'd had that. That would have been so much more, unless the reason they didn't do that is because they thought it would take away from Ryan Reynolds as an actor and him being able to do his own thing separate from other voices. I don't know, but I'm not part of the production. I'm not going to say anything. Also, the whole situation, because you guys mentioned this, Vanessa. Is her name Vanessa? I already forgot.
Yes.
That's how unimportant of a character she is. Vanessa. Thank you. Because the minute, no, to be fair, the minute I said Vanessa, I thought, Vanessa! Like, like you know what I want to know? Where is Vanessa and Deadpool and Daredevil Born Again? I want to know where she is and if she's still alive, because I haven't heard a peep from her since. And Kingpin needs, his motivation.
She's in the trailer, dude.
She's in the trailer? Yeah. Great. Dude, I haven't slept in 3 weeks. Anyway, and I was watching that on my phone while I was walking past out at the train. Anyway, okay, she's in the trailer. Great. We know what happens to Vanessa. Awesome. Great. I can sleep for 3 hours happy now. Anyway, so the kissogram, politely, respectfully, the kissogram Vanessa in Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought it was hilarious. I don't know if you guys remember the promotional material in the trailer. Not so much trailer, but promotional materials. The very first Deadpool was advertised as a Valentine's Day. This is the movie to take your significant other to. It was hilarious, and I love that was part of the joke. But Deadpool has on and off again relationships with multiple women, multiple people in the comics. And again, it's an adaptation. It doesn't, as long as it's doing its job, as long as people like it, I don't think it really matters. We can always argue it takes place in a separate timeline. It's fine. It's just a different version of this character. Deadpool Wolverine literally just showed us different timeline versions of Wolverine. Like, it's fine. It works. It only works because it's good. Let's just admit that right now. It only works. If it was bad, it didn't want to work. But Deadpool with a significant other. We have 3 movies now where his relationship is this man is doing all these fucking things because his relationship is constantly on the line with this woman. Is she still a stripper in the second movie? Is she still a stripper in the third? I don't even know what this woman does for a living. All I know is that Deadpool is still a mercenary from the first film. Tries to become a hero of sorts or join the X-Men in the second film. He's very reluctant in the first film, just getting help. The third film, he's like, fuck the X-Men. I'm just going to go straight to the top to the Avengers because he's got that MCU money now. Which is lovely, which is awesome. But, like, we see, and I like that consistency, we see him trying and struggling to become a hero. And what does that mean, as to Malik's point? But it's this thing where, again, where does she fit into all this? And I was very disappointed, and this is a legitimate criticism. I was very disappointed when the movie opens up with he's in a car dealership. Haha, very funny. But because he's trying to get his life back together, because, again, the relationship failed off screen, that's what frustrates me. The last time we saw this couple, he literally saved her from death by traveling back in time. And does she know that? Does she acknowledge that? We got some flashback scene about her struggling to be around him, struggling to be a hero. Was he struggling financially? Was he not bringing in the money? Is that why she left? I don't know what was going on.
Okay. There's an explanation for that, but also you've said a lot, and I have a lot of response to it, but I know Malik wants to talk about the action scenes. And
no, he doesn't look like he wants to talk at all.
And some of my criticisms can pick up on the action, so let's talk about the action and then go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what I have to say is pretty quick. I am interested to see all your responses to David Nick. So hold on to those. Definitely don't, forget about those. But
Write them down.
You assume I don't have all of this written down anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
What am I talking about?
I came unprepared. This is why it's a jumbled mess. But go ahead.
Okay. So, opening credits, great. I love seeing him just murder a whole bunch of TVA agents, set to music, and intercutting that with him dancing to Bye, which only exists because of X-Men 2. Because if you guys remember, Pyro, he turns that on in the radio when they first steal Cyclops' car and they drive away. And he's like, "Oh, I hate awkward silence." And then he touches the radio and that song plays. And then Wolverine's like, no, turn the shit off. He turns it off. So that's why they open the movie with that song. And it's become a viral sensation, which is brilliant. But yeah, that's a pretty solid opener. I like that. And both fights with Deadpool and Wolverine are pretty cool. I would like to point out though, because it's interesting. I don't believe there's any shots of Wolverine smoking a cigarette. Well, no. One of the alternate timeline versions we see smokes a cigarette, I think.
The Cavalrine.
Yeah, the Cavalrine. We're going to get to that. But
they gave us what the fans want.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to it. But the first fight, like out in the void, was really cool. I wish they included, I don't know how they missed this, but I really wish they had included like a moment where Deadpool goes to shoot Wolverine in the face. Because like how that fight starts off, Deadpool gets skewered, Wolverine slams him down, and then Deadpool whips out his guns and shoots at his abdomen over and over. And then Wolverine gets pissed, throws him through like part of a dilapidated building and smacks the Fox logo. And then as Wolverine walks over to him and they have that like showdown, that kind of Western standoff, and the bullets fall at his feet, which was so fucking cool. There's also a bullet in his mouth that he like spits out, and we never see Deadpool shoot at his face. So what's a bullet doing in his mouth? That bothered me, especially the second time I watched the movie.
We can make the assumption that because he's shooting him in the stomach, he regurgitated the bullet from his esophagus, but I think it's a stretch. I think that's what they were going for. Either that or there was a cut in the edit, but it's a stretch.
That's what I assumed it was, but it's weird.
Me too, but I was like, okay, just leave it.
It's very weird. Yeah, but
why is the bullet the only thing he threw up and nothing else, like the Cheerios or I don't know?
Yeah,
whatever.
That's a really cool and dynamic fight. I think the fight in the car is my favorite fight scene in the movie. Not just because of how insanely well done it's like choreographed, but also the emotional buildup towards that. Because like Hugh Jackman has, which is probably my favorite scene from him in the movie, where he just completely tears Deadpool down and actually gets him to be silent. And it's like huge. That moment is huge because we all know Wade and no one can shut him up. So the fact that like Wolverine is the first person in this trilogy to be able to do so, that's huge. And like there's a hint of self-reflection there. And then Deadpool's just like, I'm going to fight you now. And they start fighting. I do understand, because I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, Rob, about not really liking how they've gone about the power scaling for a lot of X-Men characters on film, particularly Wolverine. Because in the comics and even in the animated series, Wolverine is not this unstoppable force. He's a guy that can get back up. But like his healing factor is so strong on film that he's practically invulnerable. Like he gets cut and he gets stabbed, and the worst that happens is he screams for a second and then just keeps fighting. But that's not how Wolverine is operated in the source material, or even for a lot of the stuff in the original animated series. Like Wolverine would get hurt, and you felt it more. He could heal, get back up, and come back, but ultimately, like his healing factor did not afford him like essential invulnerability as it's depicted on film for much of this franchise, particularly in the most recent movie, which makes the fights between him and Deadpool, at least from my friend's perspective, meaningless. I wouldn't go as far as calling them meaningless for obvious reasons, but you know, there's not a huge sense of threat for these two people like cutting and stabbing each other when they can just heal. So I mean that's a fair criticism, but like for me, I really like that we have these two fights because it didn't just feel like more of the same. That fight in the car particularly, it has such a different feeling to it because it's so enclosed, it's cramped. Deadpool can't rely on a lot of the tricks of the trade that he uses because he doesn't have the space, and he's dealing with someone who can't die by normal methods. And this goes back to something that I talked to I think both of you guys about. What I love so much about Deadpool in these films is he's still an underdog, you know, despite his vulnerability. Like he can take care of normal human beings relatively easily, but when it comes time to fighting anyone else who has powers, most of the time he's on the back foot and getting his ass kicked. So that was a cool aspect for these fights. But the final fight, there was something about it that I think the thing that undercuts a lot of that final climactic battle and makes it feel hokey is it's all built up towards what we all know is going to be a fake out. Because the thing with Wolverine here is the same thing with Deadpool. Like he has essentially like invulnerability level healing factor, which means, you know, if you're going to shoot him, you're going to stab him, whatever, he's just going to get back up. But all of these other versions of Deadpool are just going down and laying there so that we can have a moment at the end where they all just get back up like zombies, and you're like, oh, we have to do this again. Like, I think, I also think the alternate, I can understand from a story perspective and with the themes and stuff why you want to have Deadpool going against a bunch of different versions of himself, but also there's something that feels a little lazy about it. Like, what are they going to fight? More Deadpools, you know?
It was more for the visual and for shits and giggles than for actual plot purposes.
Yeah.
Because what happens? They get back up, and immediately after, oh, you have a Todd? Oh, we all have. Yeah. It's just like, and then they just sneak past.
I'm coming out of this movie the first time. I felt like I didn't find the action very impressive, but I realized on second viewing that's just because it's really backloaded with all of the weaker action scenes. Because it's, again, like you guys are saying, the entire idea of fighting the Deadpool core is like that's. I have a whole thing about just the story of this movie and how I feel like every choice is so deliberate and intentional and ties into the sort of central meta conflict. And it feels like the Deadpool core is the one time where the movie just stops in its tracks to do something completely arbitrarily, where it's like, my guess is that the thought process is this is our Deadpool multiverse movie. We probably won't do another thing that makes like doing the Deadpool core such an easy, natural decision. Let's get them in here where it makes the most sense before we lose the opportunity to do that ever again. And they just didn't find an actual place for them in the story. Because you could genuinely cut out that action sequence and everything surrounding it, just everything on that street, and the story of the movie is not meaningfully changed at all. So like I think that's a weak like fight from a story perspective. And I also think the choice to do it all in one shot is an admirable idea, but I don't think it made the fight any better. Like David, you're saying that it's mainly as a gag, and like I think as a visual joke, that scene is pretty funny. As a fight scene, I don't think it's very strong, and that is coming off of the fight to get to Cassandra in her lair, which I felt like was really poorly edited. And we have all of these characters who we'll talk about eventually who are like here, and this is like their big the purpose of this fight really is to show them looking cool as like a last hurrah for like that side of the Fox like brand universe. And outside of a one or two cool shots with Gambit, I guess, I think that fight scene really lets them down because like the camera can't stay on anybody for more than 5 seconds. And,
Yeah,
like I don't
and
know.
it gets really shaky, Cammy.
Yeah,
That's
You run into the problem that these directors who are overly ambitious about these things, and I'm never going to criticize anybody for being ambitious or overly ambitious. You just have to be realistic about that ambition, which is when you have too large of a cast, even if briefly, who do we have to direct our attention to? Because now you're splitting up. You have the protagonist. You have the protagonist and you have the supporting cast. You know how to divvy up screen time. You have two leads. Okay, make it a buddy cop, make it a rom-com, make it a something. But most of the shots are going to be two shots because you can see them in the same scene running through the lines. You don't have to overcomplicate it, and they'll have one or two, three, four, maybe supporting cast depending on the story. And Deadpool does what Deadpool does best, which is we're going to cram in as much references and as much cameos as we can, especially in the third one. And we'll figure out pacing and attention later. And so we get more people, less screen time per person. And it all goes to shit when we talk about fight scenes. Because fight scenes are one of the longest and most difficult things, not just to shoot, but to prep for weeks, if not months ahead of time, depending on the choreography. And depending on whether or not the people you cast for those fights are physically fit enough to do it. Because yes, stuntmen, stuntwomen all the time, sure, but not if they're leads. Most leading men and women, leading stars, are not stuntmen or stuntwomen, which is really unfortunate, but that's besides the point. This is the facts. And now they have to be in shape. Now you need Time Magazine or The Sun or some fucking Gossip Girl bullshit to, yes, another reference. Because I was on Instagram briefly the other day and I saw this. It was like, oh, really? Elektra's workout routine to get back in shape into a suit that does nowhere resemble the original suit she wore. Because she's just, the reality is she's just older. And whatever exercise she's doing is just to become more limber for the role, not actually to slim down or trim down. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. We're happy that she's just there. But you're asking for a lot. And all these tabloids are coming at it as, oh, here's more money we can squeeze out of people who are too dumb to realize that this is actually going to help you and it's not doing the things she or anybody else or her trainer is telling you it's doing to her or for her. It's just a fucking movie that they're going to cover up in padding and a bulky costume anyway. That, and that's, to your point, we don't get enough screen time for them regardless. And it feels shaky cammy. It feels rushed, which is ironic because it is a fight scene. It's not rushed.
Yeah, it's over edited as well. Yeah, like, and to speak to that, I guess the perfect segue to kind of talk about the kind of core cameos in the movie: Elektra, Gambit, Blade, and of course Laura from Logan. And
don't forget Johnny Storm.
Oh, and our favorite Human Torch. Yeah, like that's the more I think about it, honestly, I think that's the fight scene that I like genuinely dislike the most in the movie. The one with the 4 or 5 of them fighting. Because it just like all the artistry and the intent and the focus that's in those first 2 fights is kind of non-existent. Like it feels very much like let's shake the camera, let's over edit, and there you go. We'll just plop it out and people will like it.
You know what the perfect example, counter example this is?
What?
Guardians 3 in that hallway.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Despite most of it being, not most, but that's a lie. Most of it being CGI, edited not just to cut between the various takes they did, but also more than half the characters are CG. Everyone got their fucking moment. We got more than 3 seconds is actually being generous with Deadpool and Wolverine. More than a second to 2 seconds of screen time per character. Each one got their video game equivalent of a finisher. With their baddie, they decided to scurry around the room and attack. Specifically thinking about Rocket Raccoon. That's how you have to approach fight choreography, fight scenes with so many characters. And I'm not entirely sure Mr. Sean Levy either had the experience, but I can't say. I'm not familiar with his other films off the top of my head.
They're definitely not movies that would give him that experience.
This could have been that movie that would have given him that experience. But I think we've all sat down and seen the movie, I think priorities were elsewhere. This is that thing on the call sheet you look at and you say, this is going to be fun, but what we really want to do is the car scene. What we really want to do is the shirtless scene at the very end with Hugh Jackman and holding hands and everything. So let's just get this one out of the way because those are the ones the shots we really want to get to. And I don't think you have to, when you're directing these things, when you have that much money involved and that much people involved that are also passionate about being a part of this production or any production, you have to give it 100% for all the scenes and all the takes, especially if you're the one who you wrote it as well, or in part wrote it. You can't just be more passionate about some scenes based on experience, or I will enjoy this a lot more than I'll enjoy that. Why did you write it in the first place? This is your film. Yes, know your audience, but that's what you're writing for anyways. You are that audience equally so. So be passionate about every aspect of the films, not just the parts you think people are going to enjoy more. And I think that's kind of what, thinking back, I think that's kind of what happened here, where we need like 3 big fight scenes, 2 with Logan, 2 against Logan, 1 with Logan. And then a huge scene with cameo galore in the Void or whatever it was called. I forget. And
yeah, no, it's the Void.
Yeah. The Void, yeah. Because when I think Void, I think Doctor Who, and I think, that shit's scary. But no, the MCU Void. But okay. Yeah, it's I enjoyed it a lot. I think it was very well. That scene was very confusing. Also, and this is just a nitpick for me. I never like fight scenes like that where you have guys with fucking guns standing like in a circle or just raised above. You have the perfect shot. Everyone turns into a fucking stormtrooper. You can't hit one guy. You can't hit one person. And it's always 3 or 5 against 30. You can't hit one fucking person. You can't even hit your own guy by accident. What is going on?
Maybe that's what they're trying to avoid. Who knows?
Oh God, it's just
but that's the other thing, because it's not like
It's not a
you've got
criticism of
that.
Deadpool Wolverine. This is a criticism of this fucking trope.
No,
in every
no,
fucking movie.
but David, to address that,
Yeah.
this isn't even an issue where, like, you know, we got this character and we want to give them, like, quote unquote plot armor, because Laura can't be killed by any other weapons, and more than likely neither can at least Blade. So, like, I don't understand why they can't just get hit and keep going.
Exactly. Like, all you had to do was watch them just get mulled down and just, like, shot a million times and just, okay, on to the next one. Like, they could have done that. They could have hit Deadpool. They could have hit Wolverine. All of them were unscathed. Actually, I want to touch on the point you mentioned earlier about Logan's healing factor as depicted in the movies. Now, I'm not a huge comic book reader by any standards. I'm not even a mediocre comic book reader by any standards or means. But what I do know for a fact is that Wolverine's healing factor is the holy grail of healing factors in the comics. Out of everybody who has a healing factor, Wolverine has the most advanced or the most efficient one. That's why Deadpool, part of the Weapon X program, they took what they had left of Wolverine's DNA and injected it into Wade Wilson, which is why Wade Wilson is so difficult to kill, because they have the identical healing factor, which a little bit of a missed opportunity that they didn't mention it. They're Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds could have made a really quick joke about, hey, we're kind of related.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. That's not even that, David, because completely different continuity. And Deadpool's origin is different in the movies. It's got nothing to do with Wolverine, like, at all.
It doesn't. It doesn't. They omit certain things. They don't mention certain things. So yes, it depends on how you want to go about it. Because again, this third movie technically does take place within the same. So there is a Wolverine somewhere, which means they wasn't a Weapon X program decades before the first Deadpool movie was released, which also means that's where his healing factor could have come from also, but they didn't, just because they didn't specify it doesn't mean that's not what happened. I don't know. Regardless, because you were mentioning about how Wolverine, like you mentioned vital organs or vitally hurting. There are panels in the comics where he's like on some spaceship hurtling towards the sun that burns him to a crisp, where there's nothing left but his adamantium bones, his adamantium skeleton just standing there. And he heals from that because of the DNA left with inside of the bone marrow. I don't know if you know, but bone marrow has microscopic holes. That's actually where a lot of that growth comes from, inside the bone tissue. And that he heals from that. Like, Wolverine has survived the most insane fucking shit just because of his healing factor. And the only reason why in Logan he dies at all, or at least, you know, in the comics version, I don't think they established this in the movie, but we know this because of the comics. Having an adamantium skeleton is actually poisoning him. So his healing factor is constantly working and on overdrive 24/7. So he's the only reason he dies in Old Man Logan, and he gets old in Old Man Logan, because he could have lived, who knows, a few hundred more years, is because his healing factor has been worn down at a significantly higher rate than would have been normal if he never had adamantium bonded to his skeletal system. So in theory, and in practice also, Deadpool would live longer than Logan, just because he has his healing factor without any of those limitations. So I'm not really sure what you or your friend you were talking about in terms of Fox's in whatever adaptation and version of Wolverine that has this insane healing factor where he just gets up. That's always kind of been the case. One of the first established comics that introduces Wolverine is someone who fought against the Hulk and survived. It's because of that healing factor. So yeah, and then you know, you're talking about what happens post Magneto ripping the adamantium out of his skeleton. He becomes a feral beast out in the woods, and that's his mutation. It's not that he has 3 powers based on one mutation. That's not how mutants work as established in the comics. It's one mutation. We've just misunderstood what powers he gets from that mutation. The adamantium claws was holding him back, and then he gets it, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, also, it's not that these people can't die. Another reason why, another thing established in the comics, if you aren't aware, that establishes Wolverine's healing factor as the best. There's something known as, an item known as the Muramasa Blade that is specially designed to inhibit healing factors. It's the only way to kill people with extreme healing factors. It's what Wolverine used exclusively to chop off the head of Sabretooth, who is his brother, who has a healing factor just not nearly as good, not nearly as advanced. But the only way
to get away from this movie.
I'm just speaking on the point Malik was making earlier about Wolverine's healing factor, because the thing that I spoke to Malik about in terms of the healing factors in relation to the fight choreography and the fight scenes is that the first time we see them fight, it's fun, it's great, we have a laugh, we enjoy ourselves, we have a good time. For me, the second time we see them fight, yes, it's different stakes, yes, it's different setting, but I already know what's going to happen. I knew from the very beginning, but I would still like to see it. But now I've already seen them fight. I've already seen two people who cannot kill each other because they don't have the Muramasa Blade. So they don't have the ability or technology to inhibit one or the other's healing factor. So this will just go on until they tire each other out, which is exactly what we saw in the car scene. They just fell asleep there. Perfectly fine, essentially, other than Wolverine losing his poor sleeves. So to me, every subsequent fight the both of them had with each other, also leading into the both of them teaming up to fight all the Deadpools, I was less and less enthusiastic simply because I knew exactly how each and every fight would end. Nothing is going to happen. They're going to waste all this time and all this energy to do nothing, to accomplish nothing, because neither of them can kill the other, and neither of them have the ability to kill the other Deadpools. It was a funny joke that the unharmed, the version of Deadpool that didn't have cancer also didn't have a healing factor, and we just, oh shit, like that's hilarious, and he legitimately died. So, Malik and I talked about this. Was this a little, were you trying to subvert expectations that all of these versions of Deadpool also don't have a healing factor, or some do, because they were all getting attacked and they all just lied there like ragdolls on the floor, and then, oh, they're done, they turn around, they all stand up again like zombies, like it's The Walking Dead. We fooled you. Oh, okay. Again, a little cheap, but whatever. It's what happened. It's in the movie. It's canon.
Okay.
But yeah, that's yeah.
I would like to, because Nick has also been trying to get a word in.
No. I'm done. I'm just that's what I'm
okay.
In relation to the fight scenes. I love the fight scenes, but each and every one after that involving them is kind of redundant to me. I enjoyed each one less the more I saw it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Nick.
Okay. Let's rewind like 20 minutes, because I realized as I was thinking about it that the point about why Vanessa and Wade's relationship is on the off again ties into just the central sort of like meta thematic conceit of the movie, and it ties into the cameos, and it ties into why I prefer the fourth wall breaking here. And so we start the movie not sure why Wade and Vanessa have broken up, and then we get Cassandra going into Wade's head, and the reason that they're not together anymore is basically Wade pushed her away out of insecurity, because this is the end result of him getting rejected by Happy for being a member of the Avengers, and it's clear that Wade has like really badly internalized that as like his whole thing is like, I need to matter, I need my life to have meaning, I need to be good at something, I need my existence to be like validated. And that lack of validation has him convinced that Vanessa doesn't want to be with him. So that whole conversation is like Vanessa trying her hardest to be like, wait, it's okay. Like things are not as bad as you're making it out. And he is kind of, without meaning to, like stonewalling her, and he like puts his head in his hands, is like has this quote unquote realization where he's like, just say it, just say that you don't want me, say that you don't want to be with me. And it's so clearly not true, but that is the degree to which he's like let this sort of like self-doubt in his like own significance fester in him, is that he assumes that Vanessa doesn't want to be with him because clearly she can recognize that he's like a loser who doesn't matter, when really he's the only one who thinks that. And that is like the central premise of this movie, is Wade as a guy who thinks that he can only matter if he is in the MCU proper. And like I like how far this movie goes with that. To the point that, and this is also something I was thinking about just coming out of the second viewing, but especially as you were talking about the scene with Paradox, David, my I don't have the issue with placing Paradox and Cassandra as like antagonists in this movie. It's a little bit messier with Cassandra, just because I think like being a mess is kind of the intent with her character and everything in the Void. But Paradox is Disney. He is a Disney executive, and Cassandra is kind of like the last gasp of 20th Century Fox. Because the entire idea with Paradox is he comes in and he says, okay, Deadpool is important for some kind of future purpose. Wolverine is super important because he's Wolverine. Beyond that, who gives a shit about this universe or any of the Fox stuff? He is coming at this basically from the idea that Deadpool and Wolverine are popular and profitable. We need those two, maybe even just Deadpool, because Wolverine is dead, quote unquote. Jackman has left the role ostensibly by dying in Logan. So cool, we'll take Deadpool because he's still around and people like him, and everything else can just go in the garbage. We don't care. And Wade, his arc in this movie is basically realizing that he doesn't need to be in the MCU to matter, and that comes with finding the validation in the other Fox Marvel projects, even if they're not very good. The reason that Blade and Gambit and Johnny Storm and Elektra all work in this movie as like a meaningful story piece and not just like shallow fan service, is like, oh, do you remember 20 years ago when these movies came out? Is because this movie is explicitly about looking at the back catalog of Fox Marvel and saying, some of these things were not good movies. Some of these characters were kind of shallow and flawed and silly and maybe not up to the standard of what we hold now and not what we would want in or from the MCU. But they happened and they mattered and they helped us get here, and that in and of itself is its own kind of value. And we shouldn't be so quick to like toss them in the garbage bin of history just because their universe is over, quote unquote. And the idea, especially with Logan, that like the Wolverine that we have for the majority of this movie is kind of just like a nebulous, like he's an idea of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. He's very deliberately not any version of Jackman in the role that we've seen before, because I think that ties into the meta idea that, like, again, this is where anchor beings are messy, because as a thematic idea of this movie's commentary, the idea that the Fox universe that Deadpool lives in is defunct because Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is gone is brilliant. And that is part of the commentary of the movie. And this is why I say that I don't think this movie is necessarily going to be relevant to whatever the plan of the multiverse is, because, like, again, we got to remember that for the Infinity Saga, like, we had our MacGuffins, the Infinity Stones, we established them, and you're like, oh, hey, that's a thing that we can track that will be relevant when all of this, like, climaxes. But for the most part, like take out those literal physical plot devices, a lot of what ended up being relevant across Infinity War and Endgame is retroactive, where it's only after those movies are out where we can look and say, oh, Thor's mom is actually a really important, like, emotional factor in here. And you never would have guessed that until you were in the theater watching it happen in Endgame. So, like, until we get to Avengers Doomsday and the what's the one after that? Secret Wars, we're not going to know with any certainty what little characters, what little things that we feel like are completely irrelevant right now are actually going to feel like foreshadowing or planting narrative seeds once we've watched that movie. With that said, I feel fairly confident that the idea of anchor beings is never going to come up again, because I think it's an idea that is made explicitly to talk about Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I don't see any narrative function in bringing that idea back. Because, like you say, Paradox comes out and says the idea is a universe loses its anchor being and then it dies slowly over the course of thousands of years. So, like, you just say it happens naturally. Like, it doesn't even need to be dependent on one person at all. But that setup gives us the commentary on Jackman, and it gives us the window for Paradox to be like, this project, quote unquote, this universe, these characters are slowly dying out, not fast enough for me. The humane way, he says, is to do it quickly, when really it's just about the fact that he wants the popular characters, the characters who can serve a purpose in the MCU narrative. He wants those guys, doesn't give a shit about the rest. He thinks of them as completely disposable. And the entire movie is about Wade starting in a very similar position. And that's why he does the joke. That's why we have, looking into the camera, him saying, screw you, Fox, I'm going to Disneyland, breaking the lens. Funny joke. Also really, really important to understanding where Wade's headspace is at. Because as the guy who understands that he's in movies and who has an awareness of the Fox movies are one thing and the MCU is something else, I really like, and I think this is done better than She-Hulk, because that last episode of She-Hulk does do really interesting stuff with the fourth wall breaks, but it doesn't necessarily make awareness of being in a product part of Jennifer's character. Here, the fact that he knows he's in a product is part of Wade's character. He wants to be in the Avengers. He wants to be part of the MCU because he knows how people think about the Fox movies. And he knows that even with the state that it's in, like he says, you're coming in at a bit of a low point. Even then, the MCU, I don't think it's debatable, is still more well-regarded, more popular, more profitable than the Fox Marvel side of things ever was. And Wade wants to be a part of that. And he feels like once he gets there, he'll matter and his life will have meaning. And this entire movie is about, no, that's not true. You matter, Elektra matters, Gambit matters, even though his movie never got made. Laura matters, Blade matters, all of these things that are a part of Marvel history and the history of just American movie making in the 21st century, really. They happen, they're worth acknowledging, they're worth treating with respect. And once Wade can like bring himself to that understanding, he's able to reconnect with Vanessa, reconnect properly with his friends, because he's like, these are like my universe. There's nothing wrong with me being here with these Fox characters. Just because they're not from the MCU doesn't mean that my life is worthless, basically. And that was a lot, but that's just to say I really appreciate that as a thematic idea in this movie. And like, I don't know, I feel like it's doing something with Deadpool as a character that the first two movies never got close to, and that is like so specific and unique to Deadpool.
The Fox Disney kind of merger, not really merger, really helped with that. Then the TVA from the Loki show allowed the opportunity to away thematically to have Deadpool outside of just because again a lot of his fourth wall breaks are very reference here and then moving on to actually interact and play with. I'm no longer with Fox and with Disney, and I like your perspective on that because I didn't see it that way, and I really do like that perspective on that. And on your point about anchor beings, I agree wholeheartedly. This is the first and last time we're ever going to hear from them because it's just too specific, and it's served the purpose of just Hugh Jackman. He was the star of every X-Men movie. That's why he cameoed in all the even the first class and the prequel younger version cast. He was in like every single one of them, I think, in some capacity.
Yeah, like we gave him his swan song with Logan, and then not even a full year later, we brought him back again, still to bring the second act of X-Men Apocalypse to a screeching halt. I mean,
yeah.
And like I said earlier, that like the messiness of it is just where Cassandra Nova fits in there, and that's just because like I think there is a way to fit her in, but it takes a little bit more like reading into what might not be intentional subtext, because like I feel like when Cassandra, there's a version of this movie that I think is totally fine, like structurally, where Cassandra's last scene is her giving Wade and Logan that exit out of the void, and then she just doesn't show up in the movie again. But I think there's got to be like a very deliberate purpose behind her coming in, like basically taking over as antagonist and saying to Paradox, who again is a Disney stand-in, everyone was happy, everything was fine until you decided to come and piss on my side of the fence. Where like, no one in the void was happy except for you, Cassandra. And that sense of like there's a clear delineation. There is Paradox Disney side of things, and there is Cassandra's side of things, and the two streams don't mix. And it's when Paradox oversteps his boundaries that Cassandra basically becomes like just lashing out in pure anger and like entitlement. And there's the fact that like I want to read into Cassandra as Fox on like the level of how terrible Fox is with the continuity of these movies, because I think it's interesting the idea that like Cassandra doesn't really care about anyone or anything because it's all arbitrary to her. Like Deadpool's amusing, but she has a million Deadpools. Like she can kill Johnny Storm like in a blink because who cares? There's a bunch of them. She doesn't care about continuity. Everything is disposable to her, but she provides a place and purpose for all of these forgotten, abandoned Fox characters and is willing to offer that to Wade and Logan too. She's kind of making her own version of Paradox's deal with Wade and Logan, where she's like, you guys can work for me. Like, I've got you. I collect broken things pretty much that end up here in the void. This is my territory, and I can find a purpose for you here. And I think there's something to that, as like Fox is basically it is, you know, a company in its own right. It was a studio. It's kind of like Disney without the structure, where it has a place for Elektra and Gambit and the X-Men, but it's not as clean, it's not as well thought out. It has no real care about how one project informs the next. It's just kind of operating on a very chaotic level. And I think there's something there, but I don't know. Because of that chaotic element, I think it's not as clear as like the Paradox is very obviously a Disney executive thing is.
Sounds more like Sony to me. And I think we're all in agreement. I really hope Marvel never makes a decision to make Echo a anchor being, because
I mean, again, if they did, would it matter? She'd die, and then we have several 100,000 lifetimes before it would mean anything.
yeah, we'd still have that much time left for the hard fucking show to mean anything. But yeah. Sorry, getting off of a sore subject.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of the dark times in the MCU, but
Actually, you know what?
Yeah.
No, in earnest. Speaking of the dark times in the MCU, because we already talked about the Deadpool core scene and how it doesn't really fit in.
I
Like,
wish Lady Deadpool took off her mask and we
Mhm.
saw his wife. I wish we saw.
I
Blake
also
Lively's
think that kind of like multiverse rant that Deadpool gives
wife.
is like a weird beat. Like it comes close to maybe saying something relevant to this movie, but it doesn't. Which is kind of like Deadpool being a voice for the fans who are like, the multiverse hasn't really worked out. I haven't been interested in it. But then, besides just saying that to say it, like, what is that scene accomplishing? I don't really know.
So
It's the
there's a
half-assed
joke in
fourth
this,
wall break again.
there's a joke in this movie. One of my favorite jokes in the entire movie. That is very much the thing that David in particular has been kind of complaining about the references. Like a lot of the fourth wall breaks are just references to pop culture.
Oh God,
And
I know what you're
celebrity.
talking about.
It's very
Yeah.
Family Guy-esque.
Yeah, but like it's so it's so funny. Like especially like the first time I saw the movie, like this joke killed me. Like I was laughing for like a full minute. I thought it was that funny. Um, where the one
Nice
Deadpool with
pool.
no, yeah, the nice pool, the one Deadpool with no healing factor is just like, oh, I can break the fourth wall too. The proposal. What
And
the
he
fuck was
just
that?
leaves it at
Yeah,
that.
no, I love that joke. It was really, really funny. I'm not saying the way Deadpool in all three movies, the way Deadpool has breaking the fourth wall isn't funny. No, it is really, really funny, and it's like the jokes land as long as you get the reference. However, they are very Family Guy-esque in their execution. I'm going to break the fourth wall to mention some pop culture reference, and then let's get back to the story. That's it. That's not to say the jokes aren't funny. And that was a fourth wall break that didn't have any, like he was just saying the name of, but just to be funny. Like it had nothing to do. It wasn't even a reference to that movie. It was just him breaking the fourth wall and adding to the character of how soft of a Deadpool he is. That's why it was so funny. And yes, 100%. It's my second favorite joke in the entire film.
I love how awful his costume is. Like it's got this very clearly plasticky looking armor on it. It's like
very 2000s.
Yeah, not
It
even
looks like an action
2000.
figure.
Yeah, it's very action figure because like it doesn't even look like armor; it looks like plastic.
It looks like it
It,
came off
it
the
looks
pages
like
of
an
the comic book.
over-designed Power Rangers costume.
Oh
that
no!
is- it's
Have you seen the
Deadpool
rebooted Power Rangers? That's an over-designed Power Rangers costume.
It's Deadpool with his battleizer.
Yeah.
But hang on, I'm going through my notes. Okay, yeah, hang on a second. Okay, so speaking about like the Fox verse versus the MCU verse of it all, that whole like just the way that we handle what timeline is what in the first act is weird to me because like you already mentioned, David, how odd it is that like we try to establish that Deadpool is somehow the universe where Logan took place and like it happened in the past, but like it's really really weird. And
It happens in the future that affects that future's past, meaning current Deadpool.
is that
But, like,
established? Because
that the third movie just established it. Not only that, it ends with technically there are two Wolverines now.
no, see, like I don't think the movie establishes that because like
It's not the
if
same Wolverine.
if
Well,
that's
Logan
what
still happens.
if the events of Logan are being acknowledged as happening after the events of this film by this film, then that would make sense. But I don't think the movie puts it in those terms because, like, sitting down and watching it both times, the impression I got was that Paradox is like, I'm going to kill your universe now because your Logan's already dead from the time period that I'm picking you up from. Because, like,
not that he will die in the future. It's happened already.
Yeah, because we open the movie in 2018 where Deadpool has the discussion with Happy, and then we go forward 6 years to now. And then Paradox picks up Wade. So he's taking Wade from 2024, and he says, your Logan's dead. It happened already. That's why I'm taking you now, because I'm going to kill your universe in 2024. So, like, again, what you're suggesting, David, would make more sense, but the movie doesn't tell us or show us that. What it shows us is somehow Logan, the movie, has happened pre-2024.
Logan takes place in 2029.
I know. And yet... See,
And
this
look, this is the problem.
This is one of those things where, like, the creators just aren't paying that much attention. Like, this is the infamous kind of Spider-Man Homecoming thing with the time jump. It's just like, they're either not watching their own movies or like the movies that the previous director made, and so they're not passing over the baton or like carrying the baton properly.
But then I would also believe, if that was an intentional choice to like lampoon the fact that, again, these Fox movies have had terrible continuity since day one. Mm-hmm. Like, what happened when and if certain events even happened, or what characters know certain information or not, has been a movie-to-movie problem since these movies started.
You're assuming just because they can make fun of Fox's continuity, that means they're learning from their mistakes.
Oh no, I'm not assuming that. I'm not assuming that at all.
Okay.
But
here's the thing. This is the problem we've always had with anything regarding time travel, but more specifically, multiverse. Because none of these things are actually real, verifiable, testable things. So it exists in this fantasy, hypothetical fiction where DC's version of the multiverse operates under these rules, under these conditions. Marvel's universe, multiverse, and time travel operates under these rules, under these conditions. They are not the same. And even as a general audience, if it's not deliberately explained, people come out of the theaters confused because we don't actually know how these things work. And a lot of the times, they don't even tell us other versions of time travel. What about the grandfather paradox? Like stuff like that are just not discussed. Not that they have to be discussed, but it's confusing. So let's put it this way. We have Deadpool, which takes place, they're establishing in this movie, that takes place in the Logan universe. Logan takes place in 2099. So in that universe's future, Logan dies. Paradox establishes that causes a ripple throughout the timeline, both in its future and in its past. From this point, the movie takes place here in 2018 or 2024, but Logan dies in 2029, affecting past, present, and future. So the universe itself, the entirety of that singular timeline within the multiverse is decaying. That decaying process takes roughly a couple of thousand years. The confusing part about that is, how do you calculate time when outside of time? Because how do you fucking do that? But that's a physics question for another day. Anyway,
the confusing part about that is Paradox is basically explicitly saying, I'm going to destroy your universe in 2024, which why do that if Logan's not going to be dead for another 5 years? And that's why I'm saying I don't think the movie's as clear about it as even you're giving it credit for.
No, I'm not trying to give it credit. I'm just trying to give you, this is what they're trying to tell us, and I've tried my best to understand different versions of how a multiverse functions depending on the property or the brand or the author. And in this version, this is what they've told us. Logan takes place in the future. Logan dies because he's an anchor being. That means the reality that's anchored to that anchor being. Get it? It's dying because it no longer has that base. That base is gone. The tower crumbles, but it's crumbling very, very slowly. But it's crumbling from all sides. The process usually takes 1,000 years. Paradox is like, 1,000 years is too long for me. I want this universe destroyed now, especially because I don't care. I exist outside of that timeline. I'm unaffected by it. It's one less universe to worry about. The irony about that too is the TVA is established and the movie doesn't contradict this at all. So while standard measurements, it's the same thing. The Loki show establishes that the TVA exists outside of time, unaffected by time. So what is waiting another 1,000 years if to you it may or may not feel like thousands of years because you're in the TVA existing outside of time? Because Deadpool steals the PDA from the TVA agents, he travels to the future, which is also funny. Why travel to the future for that dead Wolverine to find a skeleton when you could have traveled back to 2024 to find your alive version of Wolverine to then buddy up with, but instead you decided to travel to the future after in 2029, 2020, 2030 maybe, because all the
This is what I mean.
Why did you do that? It's for the soul. It's this movie plays, and I love the movie, but this whole plot plays like a horror film. I'm not a horror movie fan. Malik knows this. I'm not a horror fan, and he is. But the thing is, tell me if I'm wrong. Every fucking horror movie does this shit. This is why it bothers the fuck out of me. Everything that happens, literally everything, happens because it needed to happen for the movie to exist.
That's
That's just needed to be met for the plot to move forward in the very specific way that we needed to move forward because of this is what we wanted to happen. So we needed to write it in to work because reasons. Like horror movies just fuck. I can't stand horror movies because that's just how they all do it. This movie, I love this movie, but it does not function any differently. Everything that Wade does, everyone he encounters, everything that happens plot-wise, the things Paradox explains, doesn't explain, Cassandra escaping, and then her dying, as opposed to it all happened because it needed to happen, or else we wouldn't have the movie in the form and fashion of that, and Sean Levy would have been unsatisfied, or Ryan Reynolds would have thrown a fit. I don't know.
And see, not to keep
everything that happened needed to happen
any more than we have, but this is what I mean when I say that even if you don't mean to, you're giving the movie more credit than it deserves, because I don't think the movie makes it as clear as to say Deadpool travels to 2029 to find Logan. Both times I watched the movie. Yeah. Again, you're right, David. That's the only
he had to have though.
That's the only thing that makes sense. But does the movie communicate that? No, it does not. The movie,
because they fell asleep at the wheel. Where was Kevin Feige?
It's that's not in the movie. In this movie, as far as we know, Deadpool digs up Logan's Deadpool digs up Logan's corpse and pulls out that skeleton in 2024. That is how unclear that they're making it.
Exactly. And it's just, but the reason they did it is because it was a perfect excuse to travel hot universes to see other versions of Logan.
Yep.
But you didn't have to do any of that though.
Yeah. All of that is honestly padding, relatively fun padding for comic book fans. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's just padding. We're not even advancing story in any of that.
No, and we're not. And to the last point I'm going to make, not to end this conversation, but to anything for me to add, because this is something I've been wanting to say. Malik, you sent me a video earlier about someone critiquing the film about, okay, well, this is just a film. What is the plot? It doesn't mean anything. The plot doesn't tell you anything. You don't learn anything, yada, yada, yada. I'm not giving this movie more credit than it's but what I am saying is not all movies need to have a message. Sometimes we're allowed to watch just a silly, goofy, wildly entertaining movie that maybe doesn't make sense. Depending on how good it is, depends on, the better it is, the more willing we are to omit its flaws in continuity or plot details or character development because, hey, it was a fucking good movie. This is one of those movies that doesn't need a message. Technically, it has a message, and that guy completely missed it, which you brought up. Not even the Disney Fox thing, because I missed that entirely. I didn't even see it that way.
Yeah, but just there's value
his role,
and there's there's a value and meaning in your life even if you don't see it.
Exactly, and that is an age-old message we've seen countless times, which is again surprisingly we didn't miss that. Maybe the expectations were too high there and it was projecting. I don't know. What I do know is it's just Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a fucking phenomenal, funny as hell, very beautiful movie. Just go watch it for the umpteenth time. Who fucking cares? It doesn't have to have this movie. And for this character, you want to have a message for fucking Deadpool?
Although, before
Really?
we like start to close out, we've talked a lot about Wade.
Mhm.
We haven't talked so much about the Logan in this movie and how we
There's
felt
nothing to fucking say. He was perfect. No, just-
I know Malik said that he had issues with like the sort of more sentimental moments towards the end,
yeah.
and I should have said this earlier, but like on second viewing, when this movie aimed for like sincere emotion, it really hit for me, and there were a couple of times near the end where I almost teared up.
Mhm.
But like, how do we feel about this movie's specific Logan as a character, and especially like the kind of he's the quote unquote worst Wolverine aspect of it? Because I think that's an interesting choice.
It is an interesting choice.
Mhm.
I don't feel like the movie fully earns that, and I really wish it did. And I wish this movie was longer. And I know Sean Levy has talked in interviews about how it's so pretentious, everyone with their links, and sometimes it's warranted, like with stuff like Oppenheimer, and like he says that Nolan can pull it off and Quentin Tarantino can pull it off, but like most directors can't pull off long run times, so it should stop being like a thing to like aspire to, and that he's proud of kind of getting in and getting out in terms of storytelling. But I think he really needed. I would go as far as maybe 10, 15 minutes of us just getting to live in this Wolverine's like scenario, like for us to put eyes on what his version of the X-Men went through, his specific relationship to them, instead of just this lip service, because like it's not as strong. It just isn't, and a lot of it is too vague. And so essentially he gets drunk, he's on a bender while some humans show up, apparently without sentinels. Maybe there are sentinels involved, we're not really told, but apparently humans were able to show up and just wipe out the X-Men on a whim.
You're telling me you wiped out an Omega level mutant like Storm on a whim?
Yeah, like it.
Yeah.
He says like I came home, stumbled from the bar, and like the humans had killed them all. We don't know how, or even, I mean, we can surmise the why. The why really isn't important, but I think how is, especially considering like, so the humans showed up and just wiped out all the X-Men at the X-Mansion. What were you gonna do to stop that? Like, I know you're Wolverine, but there are teammates that you have that are more powerful than you.
Omega level mutants to be like, it's
yeah. So it's like, if only I was there and I wasn't
on that level, I'm fine forgiving it, because like that's just a human thing of like, you have survivor's guilt, you're not going to be rational about it.
Fine, but I think for us as an audience, way too much is left up to the imagination. And as far as I'm
torn about it, I'm really torn, because on the one hand, I think this is one of those times where it's like the saying that's like you're nothing could like live up to what your imagination could come up with. Like, I kind of like that it's left to us to think of, okay, how did they do it? Like, what were their last moments like? How bad was Logan snapping? Because that's really the thing that like makes him the worst one, is that like the team died while he wasn't there, and he went mad and started killing humans indiscriminately, whether they were responsible for it or not. And the thing is, like, we talked about this, Malik, like, should we have opened the movie with us seeing that maybe, or should we have put it somewhere? I'm of two minds, because yes, I think on some level you're absolutely right that it would help us feel closer to this version of the character. It would help that idea feel more real if we could like put faces to this event, or if we could see it happening. But on the other hand, I do like letting my imagination run wild, thinking about like, okay, who actually did this Logan kill? How did the X-Men die? Like, did he just kill like humans who weren't responsible but were adjacent to what was going on? Did he kill women? Did he kill children? And I think if we're going to have that be the idea, then they're probably thinking like, we can't we can't show that because once it's
our audience, we risk losing the audience.
yeah, you're really risking like losing the you're risking turning your audience into humans in that Logan's reality where it's like, yeah, fuck that guy. Like don't give him any booze, kick him out of the bar.
I'm not particularly conflicted about this at all. To me, the worst Logan to ever exist kind of title was nothing more than words to me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't affect the character at all because honestly, everything
it's coming from Paradox. To be
it's
fair.
coming from Paradox. There's that too, but it's regardless. It's nothing more than a way to overhype him a little bit. It's a way to demean him, but also in a way to, well, there's nowhere else to go but up. After you see the character and you have the good cop, bad cop, worst cop kind of
it's
dynamic.
also a way to like tie him into that, like, you know, Elektra was a failure, Fantastic Four movies were a failure, Gambit's movie never even got made, the Fox universe as a whole was kind of a
but not really, because other than X-Men Origins Wolverine, the X-Men movies were, at least in the early 2000s, widely successful for their time.
Yeah, but I think that's why we do it. That's why we make this, you know, the Wolverine who wasn't a success, so that he can tie more neatly into that theme. Is like just because something was a failure.
Blade doesn't even tie that neatly into the theme either.
But to be fair, he does.
These movies also did well.
But he did end with Trinity, let's remember. So
yeah, which is like, oh, go ahead.
My point being is that it's all talk. What I want to see is I want to see this version of Logan. And what I've seen from this version of Logan and the emotionality that comes out, even though it is kind of random, is this is the same exact Logan I've been watching since the very first X-Men movie. Whether or not he's in a different universe really doesn't matter because he plays the same. It's fucking Hugh Jackman. We know what to expect, and we're getting exactly what we want to get from Hugh Jackman's version of Wolverine, which has been the same version this entire fucking time. All you're telling me is that he just so happens to be the worst because he feels bad, because he no longer has his friends. And the reason he no longer has his friends is because he's been the same Wolverine he's always been since the very first X-Men. No, I'm too masculine to hang out with you guys. Like, that's all he's been doing this entire, for the past 20 fucking years. That's all he's done. Leather outfits, leather suits. I'm too cool for school. I don't need to be here. Go off on my motorcycle with my big ass cigarette. Vroom. And like, he just often, every X-Men movie ends with him riding off into the sunset outside of the mansion. He never stays in the mansion. He always rides away from it.
Not necessarily.
No, I'm joking. But it happens so often.
Yeah. And I really liked that moment with Laura.
Yeah, but it's this
where he was like, I couldn't have them thinking that I wanted to be there.
And then finally, there's an admission of that. And again, it also an admission of this masculine bravado, very old-fashioned, but mentality of I couldn't have them. I couldn't admit to them that I actually liked them, that I wanted to be there, and yada yada yada. But it's also a little bit random, that entire discussion. The start of that discussion. But I like that was there. I like that there was that openness. But regardless, it doesn't bother me because it's been nothing but all talk. What I'm doing is I'm sitting in a movie and I'm watching Hugh Jackman play Wolverine. It's the same as a Wolverine I've seen since the early 2000s. Nothing's changed. So regardless of what you're telling me has changed, no matter what you're telling me is the difference, I've seen this Wolverine for 20 years. Like, I know exactly what I'm getting. I'm not conflicted. You're trying to tell me conflicting things. I'm not saying it. I don't care. I'm enjoying myself watching this.
You see, that's the thing. And I think this aspect of the movie, for me, frankly, is very cowardly. And I would have liked to see them just take the leap and actually risk losing the audience, because I think the movie would have been better for it, with all the Wolverine stuff, and let us see him at the very least. Because it's not like they haven't done this before. I mean, they did this with Hawkeye. Granted, he was killing members of Yakuza at the beginning of Endgame. But like, let us see this Wolverine eviscerate people who do not deserve it. and have like Deadpool of all characters like get through to him that like, yeah, you did those things, but like there is a way back, and you can move forward from that, and be a good person in spite of that.
It didn't bother me at all that his thing was I just started killing humans. Like, yeah, isn't that something you normally do though? The
No,
difference
like
is
specifically
decided-
innocent people.
But
Innocent people.
But when do you get to decide who ends up being innocent and not? You've been killing people.
If he's killing
period.
civilians,
from
man,
2001.
I think we as a society,
establishing innocence is pretty easy.
yeah, I think we as a
Specifically
society,
anyone who's not involved with actively trying to kill mutants or anybody else for that matter.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I've been watching Hugh Jackman slaughter people since X1.
But who are
So-
those people that he's been slaughtering? They're always aggressors. They're always criminals. They're always like anti-mutant bigots, people who are endangering the school, endangering the children in this building.
Assassins,
never-
hitmen, or other mutants.
It's
But
never
within the
just
comics-
people. It's never civilians. If
But
he
within the comics and within the movies, the Fox universe, you can still be a bigot against mutants and just not do anything.
yeah,
and
and he
not
doesn't
actively
target
attack.
those people.
It-
Logan,
there's
there's no
activism,
point
there's-
in any of
there's-
these movies
but-
where Logan like kills or even assaults somebody who is not like the enemy. Like the
But we're
closest
talking-
thing that he comes to a confrontation with a civilian is when those cops show up in X2, and he is so calm and like not trying to start shit with those guys. And that's the closest he comes to fighting anybody who's not basically evil.
Mhm. But what I'm getting at is I've seen Hugh Jackman slaughter people left, right, and center in every single movie without remorse, without hesitation, without an ounce of like care. And then, but he's also always been this troubled character to begin with, also always trying to distance himself from people in relationships. So coming into Deadpool Wolverine, oh, I'm a troubled character again, with a troubled checkered past again, and I killed people. We're watching a movie with you killing people again, with a character who we laugh at when he kills people.
Right?
So he's just
Yeah.
killing. It's just both of them killing people now. So to me, as a viewer, and maybe it's just me amongst the three of us, but it doesn't really matter to me. He's the worst Wolverine because he killed people he wouldn't want to kill under other circumstances. But this man has been killing people for over 100 years. He states in the movie he's like what, over 100 years old. Like, he's been killing people.
Again, we
That makes no
talked
difference to me.
briefly.
That doesn't make him the worst Wolverine to me. It's all talk. So I'm
We
not
talked
conflicted.
briefly about that speech, but like that is
Yeah.
the highlight of the movie for me. I have that speech memorized.
Yeah.
And it's 200 years. He's like, you are one of the most like insufferable, attention-starved people that I've ever met, and that's saying a lot because I've been alive for over 200 fucking years.
Mhm.
And it's just it's a reality check for Wade, and it's a reality check for the audience, I think.
Mhm.
Because, and again, I think it's why it's a part of why I find this movie on repeat viewings easier to invest in emotionally than slightly 1, but especially 2, because like Wolverine is serving the purpose in this movie that basically Cable served in Deadpool 2 after a fashion, where he's like the grizzled straight man.
Mhm.
But in Deadpool 2, we never really stop making Cable the butt of the joke. And it's a very, like, in both of those movies, Wade has the very Bugs Bunny dynamic where there's basically no scene of, like, dialogue exchange or whatever where he doesn't end up coming out on top. And, like, the audience is ultimately supposed to be like, yeah, Wade got the last laugh in, that's good. But here, because we've paired him up with another character who the audience presumably is just as invested in, we get to have these moments where, like, Logan can stop the shenanigans for a second and just be like, why are you like this? Like, past a certain point, it's not funny. It's not amusing. There's something wrong with you and you need to stop. And the movie can take it seriously for a second. And Wade actually has to reflect on it. And like, it's just a really effective scene.
Yeah.
Best scene in the movie.
And Hugh Jackman's best acting in the movie. And like, we talked some about Cassandra Nova. I just want to slip in there. Emma Corrin is so good in this movie. She's really, 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 really good.
Why didn't we see Nick Fury? Why didn't we see White Nick Fury? What's going on with the cameos?
Oh, do you mean David Hasselhoff?
Yeah. Why didn't we get that? No, I'm just kidding.
Was that a Fox thing?
I don't even know. I honestly, until you mentioned it, I forgot there was a David Hasselhoff version.
David?
Yeah.
You just mentioned what might have been one of the greatest cameos in the history of film. Like, if they'd done that, like, and they made a joke about Nick Fury being white now, and we're whitewashing movies.
Again, missed opportunities here. Missed opportunities. I would have loved to see Samuel L. Jackson and White Nick Fury Hasselhoff be in the void and be like,
yeah, is it blackwashing or whitewashing? You decide.
Let's see.
I want Hasselhoff to say, I formed the Avengers.
It is. It is. The Hasselhoff Nick Fury movie is Fox. They could have had him in here.
Wow, they had the rights too. No, I would have loved to see David Hasselhoff tell Samuel L. Jackson, I formed the Avengers, and he's like, bitch, I am the Avengers. I would have loved to see that.
Oh God.
Okay. What a missed opportunity. Okay. They ran out of money. It was the budget.
Calverine, though.
Calverine, really quick, really simple, really effective. I think the only thing that bothered me a little bit was his British accent was slipping in, or he was trying too hard with the voice, but everything was just, it was just great. It was amazing.
Which is funny because he's only got the one line.
Yeah, I know. It was like, ooh, why did you sound like that? But other than that,
Cavill as Wolverine is one of those fan casts that I've never got. Like, I guess people just wanted it based purely on vibes, but I thought this cameo was funny, and that is the extent to which I ever need to see Henry Cavill as Wolverine.
I don't think he definitely doesn't have the face for Wolverine, and that's a compliment. That's not a diss.
I don't think he has the range.
This man could fly, and it wasn't magic in the Netflix, whatever. No, but it's Warhammer, which I know nothing about. But actually, no, not relevant. But my point is I've seen the fan casting. I've never been a fan of it, but I always found it interesting. I've seen fan castings for like, and I immediately forgot his name. High School Musical boy.
Zac Efron?
Zac Efron to be. I've seen Photoshop versions of Zac Efron from Baywatch to play Wolverine. Like, they use that as a template, and then all the hair and the claws.
It always
like, okay, that looks interesting. But I wasn't sold on that either. And I think, and Fox knows, Fox too, but Disney knows this as well. Recasting Logan, Hugh Jackman, is going to be the most difficult job on the planet. Because the first hurdle, 100%, you're just going to piss off everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. You're going to piss off everybody. Then we have to see the movie. And then decide whether or not the movie's good. Because if the movie's bad, doesn't matter how good the actor is. He's fucked. If the movie's great, okay, let's see him in the sequel. We're gonna have
that's exactly.
And then give them overtime. But the movie has to be good. Because regardless, they're gonna tear that, whoever he is, they're gonna tear him apart.
And my last like real thought.
Yeah.
Tying back to the whole like Logan having this ability to call out Wade, one of the moments that I was talking about that got me surprisingly almost teary-eyed near the end was like this really quick little thing that I didn't even notice on the first watch, which is like way early in the movie. I want to say like at the beginning of the second act when Wade is like talking to Logan about how his Logan died, and he brings up Blind Owl, and Logan is like, really? And Wade's like, yeah. And it's like, no, you call her Blind Owl, and then at the very end, he brings Logan home and he introduces her as Althea, and I didn't even pick up on that the first time, but I thought that was really, really sweet, and that ties into the idea that like, we end this movie with Wade having an appreciation of the people in his life that he already appreciated, sure, by the beginning of the movie very clearly, but by the end he's viewing them even more as people in his head and like appreciating their place in his life more. And
he's a little bit more sensitive about it.
Yeah. And that was like such a sweet little moment that like you could forgive the movie if that didn't happen, but it was just a nice little bit of humanity to end on.
I didn't even notice that. Yeah, Malik, did you notice that?
I did not. That's beautiful. And that's the thing though. That's so subtle, and this is the beauty of like going back to movies. Is like so many of the older folks in my family, they don't understand why I obsessively rewatch movies and TV shows that I enjoy over and over again. Because even stuff that I've seen like half a dozen times or more, if you're really paying attention, like you can stumble on some new things that you didn't notice. And to go into that scene and like watch that with that little layer of added context, like that's beautiful character work. It's very subtle.
And a movie with very little subtlety to begin with.
Yeah,
so you're going to miss it.
Oh, and speaking of that, because there is a little nitpicky thing that I found funny that I did notice when I watched it with you for the second time, and that was when Deadpool and Wolverine are outside the restaurant and they're munching on burritos after the climax.
The shawarma.
And, shawarma, whatever. And
it's a reference to Avengers, is not whatever.
Yeah, I know what the reference is.
This is serious business.
It is. It was invented by Tony Stark in 2008. No, 2012.
So anyway, the hideous, ugly dog runs up, Wade gets all excited, and he's like, "Oh, fuck off!" And then he throws the burrito down, and it's at least like 3 or 4 yards away from him when he first throws it, and then when they cut back to the shot again, the burrito's closer to his feet as he's like picking up the dog. So I'm like,
error. Wow.
Yeah, continuity error.
There was really strong winds that day.
The question you really have to ask yourself, because this is meta upon meta, the question you really have to ask yourself is a continuity error within a movie that breaks the fourth wall, or at least acknowledges it, really a continuity error?
Yes.
Or was it intentional? Or do they have to acknowledge the continuity error for it to therefore not be a continuity error?
See,
I'll leave you kiddos at home with that question to ponder. I already have the answer, but yeah.
If we ever get another Deadpool movie, they need to do this as a joke. Like make an intentional continuity error and then address it.
No, I want to write something now just for shits and giggles. I want to write a character that's constantly breaking the fourth wall, and then there's a continuity error like, oh no, we knew what happened. That was intentional. That wasn't a continuity error.
This isn't Game of Thrones. We just really like Starbucks.
Yeah. No, that's supposed to be there.
Have him be like, where the hell is the guy who's in charge of the props? Like
whatever happened with Thor?
Yeah, well, I guess we're gonna find out, or maybe we won't. Who knows?
Who knows?
Or that am I the only Cassandra one? Where he's like, where the hell is the intimacy coordinator?
Yeah. No, that was great. But going back to Thor, am I the only? I only saw the movie once. Am I the only one who noticed? I could be wrong. That looks like it was a scene. All the scenes with Thor, at least, because it cuts between.
It's straight out of the Dark World. Yeah, it's just
Dark. It's 100% just footage from the Dark World.
Yeah. No, I figured. I knew it immediately.
You can tell because he has blonde eyebrows.
Oh, is that how you can tell?
After the first two Thor movies, they just let him have his natural eyebrow color, but he has like blonded eyebrows in those two.
And then they stopped giving him the wig too, and just let him just have short hair. Okay. The last thing I want to bring up: how much did you guys love the reveal at the very end with Hugh Jackman finally, for the first time in 20 years, putting on the mask?
I adored it. I loved it so much.
Mhm.
Like the score, the slow mo, the pushing, all of that, and then I love immediately because of course we're in a Deadpool movie that
Yeah.
Wade has to immediately undercut the drama of it by being like, "What's the wind resistance on those blowjob handles?"
Yeah.
I'm just a catty bitch when I'm jealous.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
was largely indifferent to it. Like
Mhm.
intellectually, my brain is going like, this is cool that we got one of these on the way out, but like I didn't need it necessarily.
Mhm.
And whenever it's a regular dialogue moment that's not like an action thing, I think
Mhm.
that helmet's really in the way. It's impeding Jackman's performance, and I would have had him take it off after the fighting was done.
For me, I'm a little bit conflicted. I love how it looks. I'm also very impressed because I didn't expect this even while he was putting it on. But of course they would. So they, as you guys know, they puppeteer and CG the around the eyes and around the eyes to add expression to Deadpool. They did the same exact thing for Wolverine's mask. Um, a little bit unnatural, but I'll give them a pass. It still looks great. It looks amazing. My confliction comes from, where the fuck did you hide that thing? And I've seen comments online talking, oh, you see, there's a little extra padding behind his fucking neck. No, there is not.
Yeah,
For
like
an entire
forget
mask
padding.
with the Batman keyholes,
That would have
bullshit.
to be a hood, and it's clearly not
It's
visible
clearly new.
anywhere.
And they didn't do it simply because, Sean Levy's like sitting there in a dark corner with Ryan Reynolds with one candle and two, with the script and a typewriter, just like, would be such a great fucking twist.
They're talking to each other
don't
like
tell
they're
me.
Beavis and Butthead.
No, of course. He's like, it's gonna be fucking cool. What? No, no, but it's just like, what if we have Hugh slowly in slow motion put on the helmet? Big dramatic pause. Oh my god, wet. Like that, like I can totally see that. Because they
like,
had the entire fucking movie to do this. And they do it
if
at the very end. And it's
if
amazing
the hood
timing.
is actually part of the costume prior to that moment, then you're going to have the audience going, why isn't he putting it on now and now and now and now?
I don't give a shit. What I would have had done is have Wade and Wolverine somehow get back to the TVA and have, whatever. They're only there for a quick moment. They're grabbing some gear. Doesn't matter. And then off to the side, Hugh Jackman's like, hold on, I need to grab something. He just looks to the side off camera. We don't know what it is. They hop through the portal. And then they you know how they slow-mo walk back into frame into that right before? He's already wearing the helmet, or he's just putting it on. Because the first time we saw it, and what we thought would be the last time we'll see the real live action helmet at all, was at the very end of The Wolverine. And people were pissed about how blue ball they were. Like, no, he didn't even wear it. We finally get the full suit, or like a full
And it didn't even make it into the theatrical cut.
It didn't make it at all. No, no. And then we thought, oh, that's it. We'll never see it again. And we have Logan, but like he's just Logan, old man Logan. And then we finally get it. But the thing is, I'm conflicted because I love how it looks. I love how it looks on him, and like other people are commenting, it's perfect evidence. Why can't we just fucking do this for Batman? It works. It looks amazing. He's got the eyes. Just have a Batman that just has that. It's so
I'm on
easy
the
to do.
opposite end of that because
I know you are. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Malik. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, wait. It's actually funny that you say that, David, because
Well, fuck you. I'm talking
actually-
to the audience.
I'm
Everyone else
talking to
listening,
the audience.
screw these guys. Everybody else listening, that would be fucking cool. White eyes, Batman with expression.
I was going to say, I am somewhere in the middle, kind of, sort of, but not really. So, like, I understand why we have not done that with Batman in live action. At the risk of sounding pretentious, Batman movies are a little more, shall I say, prestigious, for lack of a better term.
Let's just say
than-
performance driven.
That's the Nolan effect. Take Christopher
Yeah,
Nolan out of
I was just about to say that. Yeah, it's the Nolan effect, but also like it just doesn't make sense for a lot of what they've been doing with Batman as a character recently.
I think it
I'd
could have
say
worked.
the accurate way to describe it is that, like, compared to the X-Men movies, the Batman movies are more performance driven.
Sure.
I would give you that.
Yeah.
100% I would give you
Yeah.
that. Because despite various directors, the fucking Tim Burton, to then Christopher Nolan, and then Zack Snyder, the versions of Batman are Tim Burton, but the versions of Batman, yeah, there is a lot more expression and a lot more with the character as opposed to X-Men, which you can't really have characters, even though you do. It's a team based, but yeah, no, 100%. I see what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think it would have worked well with Batfleck because of the way the movie was done and established. Batfleck could have benefited from the white.
Batfleck is such a like it's Zack Snyder, so it's such a like visually iconic. Like we're looking at Batman, the god, basically over Batman the person. So there it would have worked. Yeah.
Yeah. And Zack Snyder is known for trying to recreate scenes straight out of the comic book, and Deadpool and Wolverine did that too, actually. But yeah,
and I think it would have worked for the Batman movie that they're doing for the DCU, the new DC universe.
I need to see what the vibe of that movie is first.
Yeah, with the one that James Gunn is shepherding. I forget who the actual director is, but I would wager that what James Gunn is doing would work for that in a way that it more than likely wouldn't work for what Matt Reeves is doing.
Matt Reeves is
sure
more
it's Andy
of an
Muschietti who's attached.
I'm sorry?
I'm pretty sure it's Andy Muschietti who's attached.
Oh yeah, he is directing that, which is why I'm not excited for it.
He's the same one who did The Flash?
Yeah, he did The Flash.
Oh, this is going to be an amazing film. It's going to be so fucking fantastic.
This is going to be the movie where we find out how much of The Flash was the ridiculous years-long studio interference process.
I mean, Andy Muschietti has made one movie I liked, and it was the first It remake. Chapter 2 is kind of mediocre. But yeah, he's only made one movie that I've liked, so not exactly a fan, but we'll see how that goes. Regardless, I think that the cowl, like the costume as presented here, looks great. I would say I would actually hard disagree with you, Nick, and say no. I don't think that mask, even though it's obscuring his eyes, I don't think that mask is actually getting in the way of Hugh Jackman's performance at all. Like,
also, to be fair, this is at the very tail end of the movie where there is little to no dialogue. So it's hard to gauge how much of his performance is or isn't being hindered at all.
But think about it.
Yeah,
like he's not. Yeah. This is the most talkative. Well, aside from that big speech, he's fairly talkative. Like once they're done with that scene, like him and Wade are going back and forth. They're walking through the tunnel. They have like that whole exchange, and even after Wade like takes the sacrifice away from him, and they're talking from both sides of the door. Like Hugh Jackman
it just looks amazing. It works.
I mean, on top of that, Hugh Jackman is doing a lot of emoting with his performance and his body language and everything to clearly get across everything that needs to be given across. Like,
I think what really
you can't see his eyes
emoting,
exactly.
Even though it's
the eyes are emoting anyway. But you still get like his mouth and like the rest of his body language and stuff. So I don't feel like
and his sweaty hairy abs at the later in the no, just me. Okay, just me and Wade. Gotcha.
And I said before was my last point. This is my actual last point.
Okay.
Which is like I brought up Emma Curran, who I liked, and we've talked a lot about Hugh Jackman's performance. Something that I came away from this movie with, and also revisiting the first one, is that I don't think Ryan Reynolds gets enough credit for his actual performing as Wade Wilson. I think because like you made me think of this, David, when you brought up Robert Downey Jr., because I think Ryan Reynolds gets lumped in the same way that Robert Downey Jr. does, where it's like oh, when he's playing Tony Stark, he's just playing himself. No, he's giving a compelling, nuanced performance as a fictional character who he happens to have some similarities with. I think Ryan Reynolds is one of those guys who, like, because he does just quote unquote play himself in a lot of other movies, I think Deadpool gets lumped in with those when really he's giving a passionate, interesting performance that is similar to Ryan Reynolds and his usual shtick. But if you're really paying attention, Wade Wilson is his own fully realized person, and Ryan Reynolds is playing him as a character, not just Ryan Reynolds doing Ryan Reynolds. And I want to shout him out because I think that comes through in the first movie. I think that comes through in this movie. We'll see about number 2, but I suspect it comes through there too.
No, it definitely comes out at number 2, and it's canon, where he goes back in time and he kills Ryan Reynolds after he finished reading the Green Lantern script. So they've established in the second film that they're two completely different people. And
yeah,
Ryan
but just
Reynolds
giving
does not
him,
exist.
especially again, because he's like the only guy like who's a big lead in these superhero movies who spends so much time with his face obscured. Like, he is not the kind of guy who's gonna like take a minute to take off his mask in a pivotal scene just so that we can see his face. And given all of the like constraints he has, like, I want to give Ryan Reynolds credit because he's the lead, and as much as anything else, his acting makes this movie.
And even more so, I want to give credit because this has been a Hollywood, just a ridiculous notion forever. Granted, it has given us stuff like some brilliant stuff like the HUD for Iron Man, but not much else other than copycats, very cheap copycats at that, which is this fear of obscuring the actor's face because we're going to lose performance. And for 3 fucking movies straight, Ryan Reynolds proves, fuck you, I'll wear a mask and all you get is my voice and my eyes.
Yeah,
CG,
like the animation on the
and
eyes.
it fucking works. And it proves for 3 movies straight, ranking in popularity points, ranking in money, it works. Hollywood does not need to be afraid of obscuring the faces of their actors. Let them do their job to the best of their ability, within the limitations of the costuming or the CGI or whatever. Just have a discussion and understanding of what those look like and how to move forward from there. Just do it. It's been a problem with Spider-Man. For every 5 minutes, he has to take off his mask when he's not fighting someone, just so you can see how tired he is. Let Spider-Man, and then what did the MCU do? The brilliant idea of, they're like irises and lenses, and now Spider-Man can emote in a way that fucking makes sense. That doesn't have to be in a cartoon like Spider-Verse, which is a cartoon, so it's fine. But like in real life, it's brilliant, and I love that stuff, and I love it when it makes sense. More importantly, so yeah, no, kudos to Ryan Reynolds, because even though Tom Holland was doing to an extent, Ryan Reynolds proved you can go practically an entire film just in a mask and just have it be amazing and not ruin performance, not hinder performance. The only thing I do want to say though, and I don't know if I need to blame the Vanessa subplot or not, for all the movies, but obviously originally starting with 1, I wish he was more grotesque. I can see too much pretty boy Ryan over all the fake blisters, and I wish he was more comic accurate. Like, no, this is just cancer. All of this is just blistering cancer. I wear a mask because you don't want to see this. I've scared people just from lifting it right above my nose to eat, a chimichanga. I wish we would have seen something more like that, but no, they still made him a little bit more pretty, I guess, because how else is Vanessa going to still want to be in a relationship when the movie ends? That's my guess. But yeah, amazing film. 10 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10.
If I gave movies number ratings, I probably wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, but it was an incredibly enjoyable movie. Had some really interesting things to say. I'm glad that it's as successful as it is. And yeah, I have very few substantial complaints compared to first viewing. Definitely eager to see it again, show it to my friends. Yeah, and I come to appreciate it even more as we've talked about it here. So, mission accomplished.
And for myself to close us out here, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this film a lot. Kind of just as much as I was expecting to, if not a little more. I think this is like I said, not saving, because the more I think about it, the more I think the MCU doesn't necessarily even need to be saved. They just need to be making smarter choices.
Yeah, that's one of those whole things. It's like such fandom terminology that's not really applicable in like material reality.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily reflect how much money they're still raking in despite the movie's quality.
Yeah. Yeah, the quality control has been a big issue for them, and that's absolutely fair.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a massive step in the right direction. And I would like to see them. I don't even think it's necessary, given just how big they are as a studio and how many characters they have access to. I don't even think it's necessarily realistic to only put out one movie a year. But definitely space them out more and like let people miss it. Let people just simmer in project by project instead of bombarding them with a bunch of stuff, like they were doing for a lot of Phase 4 and 5. But yeah, I don't want this to continue, at least not from the Fox side of things. This was a nice kind of love letter to a lot of the Fox stuff. In a way that Logan was a specific, kind of swan song for Hugh Jackman's iteration of Logan, or at least that's what it was supposed to be. This is definitely like, hey, like you stuck by the Fox films and you're a fan of that franchise. Well, here you go, because we're kind of celebrating all of it again. I don't want to see us keep doing that. Like Hollywood's kind of obsession with nostalgia has made them a lot of money, but I would like to see a little more story integrity and just see them step forward. I want to see. Well, this is even if MCU even does X-Men, because I was telling Nick when X-Men 97 came out, just give me 2 or 3 more seasons of that show and I'm fine. Like, I don't even need more live action X-Men.
They're definitely going to, though, especially after
they're definitely going to do that anyway, which tells me
they're sure as hell taking their fucking time with it.
Yeah, I mean they're taking their sweet ass time. I don't think we'll see that until probably maybe Phase 7 at this point.
In my mid 30s.
Yeah, or until Hugh Jackman's 90. But but yeah, I don't want to see them keep using Hugh Jackman. I know it's going to be hard, but they need to step forward. They need to get out of nostalgia mentality and just step forward with MCU X-Men.
The irony is they just proved that they are unwilling to do that by recasting Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. But
we're not going to discuss that here. It's just
we're not going to discuss that here. This is about closing it out.
No,
that would be an interesting discussion to have at a later date. But yeah, we hope you guys also enjoyed the movie, enjoyed our discussion on said movie. Not exactly sure what we'll tackle next, but
we will not. Here's the things we will not be tackling. We will not be tackling. It's been Agatha all along. We will not be tackling that. We will not be going backwards in time and tackling The Marvels, which was absolutely not marvelous. We will not be Nick. We will not be tackling Echo because we already tackled that, and I'm not going through that again. I really hope they don't get a season. They better not get a season 2. I just had to bring it up. I hate that show so fucking much. Anyway, I'm sorry. I will not let this go. I will die on this goddamn hill. Anyway, even the deaf people will hear me. That's how bad this show is. Anyways.
God damn, man. That took me a second.
Anyway, we might actually cover, I would like to see how it goes, because I'm conflicted, but I'm curious. I'm really genuinely curious. Brave New World.
Yep.
Let's see where
Looks
that
great.
goes. Yeah, fuck Agatha. I don't know what's going on with that. That looks so.
It looks
Whatever.
like
Get
a
back to her.
show that exists, and I will judge it when I see it.
I'm skipping it. Malik?
Yeah, I'm most certainly skipping that. I'd rather drink battery acid.
Yeah, damn, man.
Yeah.
Hey, it might give you magic.
Okay. Signing
Yeah,
off, guys.
Bye.